Today's lecture is called A Journey into Microcosmos. During the history, there have been many prophets, and there is the Old Testament and the New Testament. And many of these prophets, they were initiated or partly initiated. That means they had some knowledge about relations to other human beings. But in the Third Testament, Martinus speaks about a full initiation. And then you can be initiated in microcosmos and macrocosmos and mesocosmos. And Martinus is talking a lot about neighbourly love. And then you could ask, who is my neighbour? And the old prophets who were partly initiated or initiated, they could talk about our relationships to other human beings. But in the Third Testament, this notion of neighbourly love has been enlarged very much. Martinus is in the 6th volume of Livets Bog talking about you can be threefold initiated. That is, when you have a completely developed cosmic consciousness, then you are initiated in macrocosmos, mesocosmos, and microcosmos. And this lecture is about love to microcosmos. And it was something that did not belong to the teaching of Jesus. In the Old Testament, there was no teaching about love to microcosmos. And the living beings in microcosmos was not mentioned as our neighbors or as our fellow beings. So this is something new in the Third Testament. Jesus, he had a teaching. He tried to improve the moral. He tried to teach what is neighbourly love, and he showed brotherly love and neighbourly love by his own acts. And the culmination of the mission of Jesus was when he was crucified. And then he prayed for his enemies, forgive them because they do not know what they are doing. There's also been a movie here newly from Mel Gibson called The Passion, which shows how Jesus was tortured the whole day before his... I've not seen the movie because I heard it's very violent. It has really shown how much pain he had to suffer. But from a cosmological point of view, it's interesting to see that he had suffered so much, you can't hardly imagine how much he has suffered. But in this condition, he could say, Father, forgive them. They do not know what they are doing. He had sympathy for those who killed him and he tortured him. That was the culmination of neighbourly love. But Jesus knew that he knew much more, but he knew the people at that time, they could not understand anymore. And Jesus promised that the spokesman, the Holy Spirit, would come later and tell them more. And Martinus said, the Holy Spirit is not a person. The Holy Spirit, that is knowledge. That is the spiritual science that would come. And in this spiritual science, there are things that belong to Christianism. But Jesus could not tell it at that time because the people at that time, they could not understand it. And I love to stress 3 things in the Third Testament that is not in the Old Testament and not in the New Testament. And one thing is love to microcosmos. That was not a subject in the New Testament. And also the sexual transformation of man. Martinus says, there have been men and women, there are men and women, but in the future there will not be men and women. I think that's the biggest surprise in Martinus Cosmology. Surprise, surprise. In the future there will not be men and women. There will be a third sex, a double-pole sex. And that did not belong to the teaching of Jesus. As well as love to microcosmos was not a part of his teaching. And of course you could mention several things, but one thing that I find very remarkable about Martinus Cosmology, that is that he can justify the darkness. He has defended the darkness. Martinus has shown that the darkness has plays a role, it has a mission, there is a meaning with the darkness. One thing is, when Martinus explains the eternal principles, the condition for eternal life, that is, that there is contrasts, and if you should have an eternal life, you shall also have access to both contrasts and life for eternity. So, and without contrast, no life. So the contrasts are an advantage for the living beings. You know yin and yang, this old symbol. What is most important, light or darkness? If you have a photo, black and white, what is most important, the black or the white color? They have the same importance. But you can only argue about this if you have the point seen from the eternity. Martinus says that he has created an eternal world picture. You can only justify or defend the darkness if you look upon life in an eternal perspective. If we only have one life, you cannot argue that the darkness is a good thing. Martinus talks about everything is very good, but not everything is pleasant. So it is the pleasant good and the unpleasant good. And I think that's an ingenious expression. But these three things, I think that's really new in Martinus Cosmology. Love to macrocosmos, the sexual transformation, and the justification of darkness. Here you can really get a logical explanation. In all other teachings, it has been so. You can experience something that is pleasant. That's the work of God. And there is unpleasant thing, and that's the devil. I mean, all people has divided the world in good and bad, friends and enemies. It's been so all the time. Through several thousands of years, it's always been friends and enemies, God and devil, good and pleasant. So that's really something new, that everything is very good. Everything is not very pleasant, but everything is very good. So that's really a job. Martinus shows everything is an expression of love. Everything is very good. So Martinus, he wrote his book, The Book of Life. It was published in 1932, and of course it was important to publish this introduction. But when he had published the first volume of Livsbog, he did not write the second volume. The second volume followed 9 years later. The first thing he started to write on, that was the ideal food and what it's called, sepulture or burial. I don't really know how to translate bisættelse. Funeral. This book, I'll call it Funeral. He wrote these two books, and that is two small main works by Martinus on the subject, love to microcosmos. He also wrote some articles in Cosmos about the same subject, and that had to do with meat eating and love to our organs and our cells. There is an article where Martinus says that we create our fate in three main areas. We create fate in relationship to other human beings. It's important how we treat others. If you are lying to others, they will lie to you. If you are killing others, you will be killed, and so on. You will reap what you have sowed. That's very important. And if you want to have a happy life, a harmonious, healthy, happy life, you have to treat your fellow beings in a nice way. But there are people who are treating other people very nicely, but anyway, they are sick, unhappy, depressed. Maybe they have not taken into consideration that they should also practice neighbourly love towards the animals, because they are also living beings. They are just younger brothers in the evolution. So it's also very important for our fate how we are treating the animals. And when you are eating meat, you are the cause to the killing of many animals. In a question period, he even mentioned when we have slaughteries, these slaughterhouses where the animals are slaughtered on an industrial scale, he said, there are a big concentration of guardian angels who are helping the animals, because it's so terrible for the animals to be killed. And there are guardian angels. He don't use the word laser, but it was as if these guardian angels directly could send some kind of beam or help to these animals, so they were helped immediately after they were slaughtered. And he also once said that the animals are flying away from the human beings on the spiritual plane, because they don't really love us because of this killing on an industrial scale. So the animals, for them, it's a big accident to be killed. And in the ideal food, Martinus writes about 2 factors. One is the fate. If we are eating meat, we are the cause of killing of animals, and then can give us a fate. They experience as an accident to be killed. Then we can also be killed in accidents. Car accident, flight accidents, or where you are working or in your home, you can have different accidents. And once in the future, when people become vegetarians, it's because they cannot bring it over their heart to kill animals. That is the deepest reason for becoming a vegetarian. That is because you want to protect the animals. You don't want any bloodshed. But there is another factor, and that is the health factor. Martinus explains it's not good for our health to eat meat, because we have to do a job or big work to digest meat. We have to break down the meat and the cells and the organelles or organs, molecules and so on. So actually it's a too hard work for the organism to break down the meat. Meat is good and healthy for the tiger and the lion. That's really healthy food for them. But they have lower vibrations. Now terrestrial man have so high vibrations that man should not eat meat. That is too tough or rough for the human being. So meat eating has 2 big consequences for the fate and the health. And Martinus says, if you want protection against accidents, you should become a vegetarian. But that's not enough. If I say I'm vegetarian and there's a big lorry, big van coming, I'm just crossing the street, doesn't matter, I'm vegetarian. But anyway, I'm killed. So that means that was stupid to do such a thing. That is, you are breaking the law of intelligence. So, and if you can also say, I'm drinking, I'm really drunk, and I'm driving, I cannot have a car accident because I'm vegetarian. But I can have an accident if I'm very drunk. That means that's also breaking the natural laws. So it's not enough, but you could say you can protect yourself. But Martinus, he did not attack people who was eating meat. He did not criticize them. I think it's the same if you go to your doctor and he asks, are you smoking? Yes. Do you think the doctor will get angry with you because you're smoking? He could say it's not so healthy, but that's your choice. You can smoke if you want, but it's not so good for your health. And I mean, Martinus, he's saying that in the same spirit. You can make the choice yourself. Martinus shows the consequences by meat eating. But he loved everybody, and we all have our free will. You can do as you like. Well, there can be people, they are very nice to other people, and they are very kind to the animals, and they're vegetarians. But anyway, they are sick, they are ill, they are unhappy, they are depressed. They do not have a happy fate. That's because there are 3 big areas. Our relation to human beings, our relation to animals, and then it is our relation to microcosmos. And I would like to have the first symbol. And this is the principle of life units. It could be a symbol of the whole universe. It can also be the symbol of a terrestrial man. And this triune principle you might have heard in earlier lectures. We have an eternal self. This is the eternal I, also called X1, that is the creator. And this is X2, that is the creative power. And X3 out here, that is the created result. So that is our body. X1, X2, X3, the creator, the creative power, and the created result. But what is interesting is that all our organs are individual living beings. They also have an eternal I, creative power, and the created result is the cell. Once I heard about a psychologist. He was helping people to stop smoking. And he had a certain trick. He took 2 chairs and said to his client, please sit down in this chair. And now we'll try to imagine that your lungs are sitting in the other chair. And now I want you to make a conversation with your lungs. For example, you can sit down and have a chat with your lungs, how the lungs are feeling when I'm taking a cigarette. So, but I just mentioned he had very good results. It was very effective that people were trying to understand that their lungs are a living being. And it was very effective. And according to the cosmology, there is a true, actually, the lungs are an individual, has its own eternal self. And you should also practice neighbourly love, not only to human beings and animals, but also to your own organs. So it's a good way to start to become conscious about the fact that your organs are individual living beings. And the psychologist, he made it very clear. Try to imagine that your lungs are sitting in this chair and talking to you. So sometimes you think, this is my body. It's only more or less material. You don't really think about it as individual living beings. And this is an organ, the I, the creator, the creative power, and the created result is the organ. And it is constructed by cells, and the cells are living beings, and they also have the created result. And Martinus goes on further with the molecules are living beings, the atoms are living beings, the electrons are living beings. But to us, it's hard to imagine that it goes on for eternity in microcosmos. I think it's easier to understand with the numbers. You could say, this is 1, then this is 0, the organs that is 0.1, the cells that is 0.01, the molecules 0.001. So you can imagine you can go on for eternity and making 0.00001. This is a very small figure, but you can always make figures that are even smaller. So with a number system, it's very easy to understand. You can go on for eternity. There's still smaller and smaller and smaller numbers. So in the same way, Martinus says there is still smaller and smaller and smaller individuals. So we are actually gods. We have in us a living universe, and we are deciding about the conditions in our micro world. So that's really an enlargement of the notion of who is my neighbor. You have, maybe there is 5 members in your family and 10 people at your work. That's a small number compared to the billions and billions of living beings that are in your body. This is a whole universe, and it's good to start to become conscious about the conditions for these micro individuals. Maybe I would like to start with the funeral aspect. It is some analysis that people think are very strange, but Martinus explains that when we die, our organs will also die, and the cells will die. When the heart stops to pump, there is no blood circulation, there is no oxygen for the organs and the cells, and then it will die rather quickly. But then the surprise is that the body is not dead. Martinus explains there are still animal life in the corpse. There are living macromolecules, living atoms and electrons and so on. So there is really life in the corpse. And that's sort of the surprise. For that reason, Martinus says that you should not cremate the body. You should not burn the corpse, because then you are burning living people, sort of. You know, 500 years ago, the Catholic Inquisition, they were burning witches alive. And I think it was so terrible to be killed in that way when we are burned. It's so terrible, and sometimes you can see it in the movies and you can't hardly stand to see these terrible pictures. But that's what you are doing if you would let your corpse be cremated. And it's not only one witch that is burned. It's not only millions. It's billions and billions of living people. In a way, they are terrestrial men, just on a microcosmic scale. So it's really terrible for the animal life in the corpse to be burned, to be cremated. So for that reason, you should try to avoid the cremation. And that's the main theme of this book, Funeral. But Martinus also recommended that you would let your corpse embalm. In Denmark, you can become embalmed with this chemical formaldehyde, methanal, or what you call it, formaldehyde, formalin, meta-analysis has different names. And the idea is to stop the bacteria to eat the corpse. I think you could say that when you are eating, you are burning the calories, you are burning your diet. But you could also say if the bacteria are eating the corpse, because when the corpse is rotting, it is decomposed by microbeings, like bacteria and so on. So that in a way means if the corpse is allowed to rotten, it is burned slowly in the metabolism of the bacteria. It's a slow burning, because when you're burnt, the result would be carbon dioxide, water, and ashes. But in a way, it's the same when the corpse has been digested by the bacteria. It's also brought down to carbon dioxide and water and maybe some other substances. So, you should try to protect your corpse against being burned. That means the general idea by the embalming is antibiotics. The general meaning by the embalming is to stop the bacteria. The bacteria should not be allowed to burn the corpse slowly. Also, the old Egyptians had these embalming procedures. And I mean, everything that is stopping the growth of bacteria are used in the embalming. If it is too dry, too salt, too acid, they cannot. There is some bogs in Denmark where they have found Grauballemanden and the Tollundman. It is corpses that are 2,000-3,000 years old, but they are well preserved because there was this tannin acid and other acids in the bog, so that the bacteria could not grow. So if it's too dry, and if there is some antibiotic substance. In United States, there are many trials at court, and very often they dig up the corpses to take some probes or to find out why they died. And sometimes they were very surprised that corpses that were 2 weeks or 2 months old were well preserved. Sometimes they were very well preserved. But then they find out if people were treated with antibiotics when they were ill before they died, the corpse was very well preserved because they were treated with antibiotics. So privately, I think I'll do like I've seen in the movies. You know, in some movies there are some spies, and then they are going to be tortured, but then they have a little pill, they swallow the pill, and then they commit suicide, and they cannot tell the truth because they just took this poison before. So when I'm on the edge of to die, I would have a big packet of penicillium or antibiotics. So just before I'm dying, I would swallow quite a lot of antibiotics, because then I was sort of assured that I was embalmed. Martinus, he wanted to be embalmed, and it was documented by his co-workers that he was treated with formaldehyde at the hospital of Frederiksberg. So, and that belonged to Martinus' mission. Of course, Martinus' mission was to write these books, but there were also other smaller things that belonged to his mission. He said that it belonged also to his mission to show that you can come to the highest knowledge in the universe. You can get all the knowledge you want by yourself. And he even wanted some of his co-workers to make interviews with the people who had known him before he got cosmic consciousness, so that they could witness Martinus has not made any studies. He has not made any academic studies. That was important to Martinus also, to be a living example of the fact you can get the highest knowledge in the universe without studying. You can get the highest knowledge through yourself. That also belonged to his mission. And Martinus, he did not touch alcohol, tobacco, and women. That also belonged to his mission, I think. I mean, you could not, under any circumstances, get that Martinus would eat meat. But some people were very surprised. Oh, Martinus, can you eat sweeties? Are you eating cookies? Are you drinking black tea? And so on. But then Martinus says, yes, it is not belonging to my mission. I shall not be an example in this area. He said that was not his mission to make an example of this in this area, but he strongly felt that it belonged to his mission to show that you should take care of your corpse. And he says it has karmic consequences. If you let your corpse cremate, you are not protected against fire. Then, in your next life, you can have accidents with fire, or you can be burned by boiling water. So some people say, I do not want to be cremated. I cannot explain why, but I can't stand it. I can't stand the idea that my corpse should be cremated. Why do they feel like this? I guess that's because they have had accidents with fire in previous lives. They don't like it. And also in a question period from 1973, he says, you can get certain forms of cancer if you let your corpse rotten in the earth, because maybe you have seen this film Jurassic Park. These are some of these dinosaurs that are made alive, and then they are eating the people. It's terrible. I also once saw The Night of the Triffids or Triffids or something. There's some plant monsters with 3 legs that were going around and eating all human beings, and it was horrible. They could not do anything against all these terrible. They were just eating them up. And Martinus makes such analogies to make us understand how our micro-individuals experience when the bacteria are invading the body. Because the bacteria are monsters that are eating small terrestrial men, so that's really terrible. So I don't know, that's my own thoughts about the cancer. In a way, when you get cancer, there's also some cells that you cannot control. These cells are very asocial. They're sort of taking power and just eating and doing what they're doing. So it sounds maybe a little bit terrible, but everything has consequences. And actually, many people are embalmed. Maybe you don't know about it. But if you die in a foreign country and your corpse is going to be sent home to your home country, all corpses that are transported over the boundaries or that they are treated with formaldehyde. You cannot have these stinking corpses in the flights and so on. So maybe it's more common than you think that the corpses are treated with formaldehyde to stop this putrefaction of it. It shouldn't rotten. But maybe I should not do so much more about this subject. But in general, I think it would be a big step if you could write in your testament or in your will that you would like to be treated with formaldehyde. I think it would cost about 2,000 kroners in Denmark today. Then, of course, you can improve it with metal boxes and special coffins and special conditions. But I think at least it would be good to be treated with some kind of antibiotics. And formaldehyde, you could say that's a strong antibiotic compound. But there are other aspects of love to microcosmos. And that is, what are we drinking and what are we eating? And many people are drinking alcohol, and they are drinking too much. They are becoming alcoholists. They are becoming alcoholic. And maybe in one life you're drinking very much, but if you don't stop drinking alcohol in this life, then it would continue in the next life. Already when you are a youngster, you will start to drink alcohol, but much more than the other youngsters, because you'll already become used to this drinking. So you can sink deeper and deeper down in this alcoholism. And Martinus has prescribed how you can be an alcoholic 3 lives after each other. And then at the end, you are totally broken down by alcohol. But the problem is not only that it is your physical body that is broken down. You have also broken down your talent kernels. Alcohol is toxic for the brain and the nervous system. But it also destroys the talent kernels for the creation of a healthy and normal brain. That means that some of your talent kernels are defect. And then you can be born with Down syndrome. As a Mongoloid, you have these Mongolian traits, you are very handicapped, and you have to be treated by other people. Even in a microscope, you can see the genes and the chromosomes are defect. You can see there are some errors in the chromosomes. And Martinus says, actually, the genes and chromosomes are a mirror image of your talent kernels in your superconsciousness. So that the real reason to Down syndrome is not in the genes and chromosomes. It is in the defects in the superconsciousness. So, when you are a materialist, you think you can fight Down syndrome with abortions. But the cause is not in the genes and chromosomes. The cause to Down syndrome is that they have been alcoholists. And the way back to normality is quite simple. It is to live normal. And when you are broken totally down and you are so handicapped you cannot live on your own, you cannot go and buy your alcohol in the grocery shop. So in a natural way it should stop so you do not get your alcohol. But then also it could take 3 lives to build up a normal body again. If it has taken 2 lives to destroy it, why shouldn't it take 2 lives to get back to normality? There is also a part in volume 6 of Livets Bog, where Martinus is writing about alcoholism. He's also writing about it in The Ideal Food. He says, I think it's chapter 3 or chapter 4, it is candidates for coming lives in abnormal incarnations. And that is, he explains how you can destroy your talent kernels. Also with drugs, narco, you can destroy your talent kernels. I usually use my fingers as a symbol to explain this. If you have 5 healthy talent kernels in your superconsciousness, you are attracted to healthy genes and chromosomes. It fits. But if I have made an error and damaged my talent kernels in my superconsciousness, I cannot incarnate in genes and chromosomes which can give me a normal body. There is a repulsion. There is a law of attraction and repulsion. You know that from the school when you studied physics, when it's about electricity and magnetism. There is the laws of attraction and repulsion. And the spiritual world is an electromagnetical world. And the world of the genes and chromosomes is also an electromagnetical world. So that means in the process of reincarnation, there are 2 kinds of electromagnetical worlds that are meeting each other. And there is laws of repulsion and attraction. So if I have damaged 3 talents in my superconsciousness, I will be attracted to chromosomes with the same 3 defects. So the real reason why I'm ill is in my own talent kernels. You could also say every time when a child is born with a sickness, a handicap, the reason is in its previous lives. It has been living in a wrong way in its previous lives. And it is not easy to destroy the talent kernels. You cannot do it in one way, in one day, or in 1 week or 1 month. You have to sort of attack the talent kernels every day, year in and year out and year in and year out. He also just mentioned about headache. If you're not sleeping enough, your nervous system is not repaired. I know for myself, if I have very much to do, I'm very stressed and I'm sleeping too little, I'm getting a headache. It's quite natural because it's a stress to your nervous system. You should sleep enough so that the nervous system is repaired. But it can also become a habit that you go to bed too late every day, every night, and you have to go to work early in the morning, and you just get up automatically, and irrespectively if you have slept enough or not, you are just getting out of bed. And if you are sort of destroying your nervous system every day by sleeping too little. And then he says, in the next life, you can have very strong tendencies for headache, migraine. So that means some people, they are born with migraine. They have so easy to get a very, very strong headache. But that is because they abused the nervous system in previous lives. If you are getting too fat, maybe you'd say, well, that's because the parents have genes for this fatness. Poor child, it's so fat because of the parents. But Martinus says they are not the reason. Then Martinus explains, if you eat too much every day, you are also attacking a normal digestion. You are attacking a normal metabolism. It's sort of overloaded. But if you're doing it, it doesn't matter if you're eating too much this evening on the terrace. But if you're doing it every day the rest of your life, it has very deep consequences. And Olav on the back road has referred to me that once Martinus was asked, what about overweight? And Martinus answered, well, it's not so easy because it is an organical tendency. That means that problem with overweight, it's not just to eat green salad or to eat fruit or go on some special diet. It cannot be repaired so quickly. It's deeper, organical, rooted because you have done this. But I think it's so wonderful to hear that the road back to normality is so simple. It's just to live normal. So you should stop overeating, you should stop drinking alcohol, or you should stop sleeping too little. You should just start to live normal, and then everything will gradually be repaired. But I'm jumping a little bit. I'm going back to volume 6 of Livets Bog, where Martinus is talking about alcoholism. And he is using very strong words because he is prescribing an alcoholic who is drinking alcohol. And this alcohol is poisonous, it's toxic. And there are many micro-individuals that are treated with alcohol. They don't want it, but they cannot help it. So he is really a tyrant. He is a devil. Martinus writes, he is a tyrant. He is a devil to his microcosmos. And also it would be the same with the smoker. That's also that the lungs are polluted. Who of you would like to work in a chemical factory where you were forced to work the day long and there were toxic substances in the air that you were forced to breathe? It's terrible to work in such conditions, day in and day out and day in and day out. It's not permitted today. It's terrible. But our micro-individuals are subjects to this treatment when we are smoking or drinking alcohol or taking these substances. They cannot do it. They cannot run away. They cannot go on strike. They just have to. But also, as was mentioned in the lecture of the morning, there is also a karma. If we are treating our microcosmos in a bad way, I can be treated in a bad way as a micro-individual. Maybe I can live in a region on the planet Earth where there is much pollution, where there is earthquake or toxic substances in the water or so on. So I mean, we can also, or maybe just in a big city with a lot of pollution and so on, so we can also live in a toxic environment. But there is a reason why we've got this fate to live in a toxic environment. That's because I have polluted my own micro-individuals. Some people are saying about the smoking. You could say to a person who is smoking 40, 60 cigarettes a day, you should stop smoking. He says, no, I won't. I want to have this joy. It's very pleasant for me to smoke. I won't give it up. Maybe I would die 10, 20 years before normal, but I don't care. I want my cigarettes, and when I'm dead, it's out. There's no problem anymore because then I'm dead. But Martinus said, no, that's not the end. Maybe this person actually dies from a lung cancer 10, 20 years before normal time. But Martinus says the talent kernels have been damaged. And that means that this person will in next life be born with weak lungs. Could be, what do I know, cystic fibrosis or asthma or whatever it could be. I read a very interesting article in the newspaper, Metro Express, that you can read all over in the stations and the trains. The researchers had examined children, and it showed out that children with asthma were smoking more than children without asthma. And that was really a big surprise. I mean, if you're a child with asthmatic tendencies, then you would not like to smoke. But the researcher was very surprised. Children with asthma is starting to smoke earlier, and they are smoking more than their friends. But I think from a cosmological point of view, that could be a proof. Why are they starting to smoke earlier, and why are they smoking? Because they've got used to it in previous lives. And you can already see the result in this life. They have this asthma. So I found maybe there was a cosmological explanation to this fact, because the researchers, they couldn't find it. They thought it might be illogical. If you have asthma, you wouldn't like to smoke. So why should they smoke even more than the others? Well, that was sort of the physical way you can treat your microcosmos in different ways. Physically, you can sleep too little, you can drink and smoke and so on. But maybe even the most important factor in neighborly love to microcosmos is our thoughts. We have a climate. We live in a climate. What can we do if there is a typhoon? What can we do if there is an earthquake? We can do nothing. There are very strong forces in the nature. We can't control them. But in the same way, our thoughts are the highest power of nature in our body. Our thoughts decide the conditions. Now, some Danes have been complaining about a bad summer. But it could be, if I have had some negative thoughts during the summer, maybe I have created a very, very bad summer in my micro world, because my way of thinking is determining the conditions in my microcosmos. I think the biggest surprise by seeing Martinus, or by knowing him personally, that was he laughed very much. You think he must be very serious, a prophet, a big writer, and he's very serious. But he had almost a childish humor. He could laugh on small things, and he was laughing very much. Also in his question periods, there was a ping pong, and he was laughing, and people was laughing. And actually, he often recommended laugh, 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 because it is waves of sunshine and light penetrating your whole micro world, your whole microcosmos. So he thought it's really healthy to be happy and to laugh. That's really good. And of course, if you are angry, if you are aggressive and so on, he says that's explosions in your microcosmos. That's world wars. We can talk about how terrible it is with World War I and World War II and the 11th of September in New York and so on. But maybe that's nothing compared to when I'm irritated or angry. Maybe there are billions of micro individuals that are killed or suffers by my aggression because I have these thoughts. Also, if you are depressed and sad, that also gives very bad conditions in your microcosmos. And there is two ways of thinking. There is the positive way of thinking and the negative way of thinking. And it's very important not to have negative thoughts. Through negative thoughts, you can lose life power. If there are some infections, there are bacteria and vira in the air, some people are getting ill and some are not. Why are some people getting ill and why are some not? That's because their life power is different. If people has a strong life power, they are not infected. But if you are low in life power, then you are infected. And there was one lecture where Martinus almost gave a definition of life power. He said, life power, or joy of living. No, life power, that is joy of life. If you are enjoying life, if you are happy about life, you automatically have life force and life power. So that's also very interesting. You think you should be strong and train or whatever. But if you feel happy about life, you automatically have life power and life force. And there are so many people today, they are depressed and tired and, I don't know, there's some burned out syndromes and people are totally tired and so on. But according to Martinus, it's because they are thinking in a wrong way. And the most important or the most common error you can make, that is that you feel yourself as a victim. I'm treated in a bad way. I am an angel. I have done nothing wrong. But it is my husband, my wife, my colleagues, my children. They are destroying my life. Even if you have an accident, you are handicapped, because then it was the other driver who is cause of my problems. I'm a victim. And it is very natural that you experience it like this. I am a victim of my surroundings, because seen with physical eyes, it is the other people who are the cause of my problem. But here is also this symbol of the eternal body on the wall, and that is the energies that you're sending out, they're coming back. You cannot see it with your physical eyes. So you cannot physically see, I am the cause of my own fate. But if you study the spiritual science, maybe you can understand it's the only logical way. But it's understandable that people feel themselves as victims, because apparently the cause is in the outer world. But what the spiritual science shows, you are always the cause yourself. You are just receiving the energies that you have sent out. And Martinus is talking about a mental prison. You can repeat and repeat and repeat. I was treated in an unjust way. My husband and my wife deceived me, and I've been so loyal and I've helped, and then I was deceived by this person. I cannot forget it. I cannot forgive it. And then these thoughts can go around and around and around in the head. You can also create a talent for negative thoughts. You can be thinking of the same things all the time. And then the thoughts are almost repeating and repeating and repeating. This creates a mental prison, but it also takes all your energy. And in the first place, you suffer from what Martinus called unnatural fatigue. Unnatural fatigue. If you have worked very hard, you get very tired, but this can be repaired through sleep. If you take a rest and you're sleeping, this natural fatigue can be repaired. But there is another kind of fatigue that cannot be repaired with sleeping and resting. I know depressed people can lie in bed 10, 12, 14, 16 hours per day, but they are still very tired and very burned out. This shows that the cause to this fatigue is not physical. It's not in the outer world. It's in your inner world. It has to do with your consciousness. You have to do a work on your own consciousness to become liberated from this unnatural fatigue. And then, first, you must understand, I am the cause myself to my fate. I think it's the most simple thing in cosmology. You have to reap what you've sowed. When you send an energy out, it will come back. It's so easy. But for me personally, it's the most difficult thing in the whole cosmology. Always to accept in all situations with other people, Ole, you are the cause yourself. Because very often I'm getting irritated and angry with other people. And when you're getting irritated and with other people, angry with other people, you think they are the cause. You have forgotten, I am the cause myself. And also, if you are angry with other people, you're beating them, and you should know you are angry with yourself. You're beating yourself. If you really had integrated the law of karma, you would never be unkind to another person, because you would know, I'm unkind to myself. Now I'm torturing another person. No, you're not. You're torturing yourself. But you don't really understand it. So it's really difficult to integrate in your private life. But Martinus really stresses, if you suffer from this unnatural fatigue, if you really feel I'm a victim, it's injustice, I'm so tired, it's so important to say, I am the cause myself to my situation. You have to take responsibility and say, I am the cause myself. And then Martinus guarantees that energy are returning to you. Energy are flowing back to you. This is the first simple step to say, I am the cause myself. But later on, you might even be able to feel that you're grateful. If you understand the spiritual science, you can understand, I experience these sufferings in order to develop. Life, nature, or God, whatever you want, is transforming me from an egoistic animal into a perfect human being, a Christ being, a being like God. What a marvelous project that I'm transformed from a lousy egoist to a perfect Christ being. It's a fantastic project. And we are learning this in the school of life, and we are taught in school by life. And you are taught by this principle that you can experience the consequences of what you've done yourself. And then you can become grateful towards life. I am happy because I can see now what I've made wrong. It is absolutely unpleasant to experience, but I'm happy that I know I've done that wrong, and it's so terrible. If a person has deceived you, you should just say, okay, I've deceived other persons. I'm very happy about this lesson. Now I'll stop to deceive other persons. I'm very happy. Now I've progressed in my life. Now I really feel I cannot do this anymore. Instead of being angry with the same person, she deceived me, I cannot forgive it, and make this mental prison. It's better to have some sportsmanship, and so you can take your karma. And that means you can be grateful towards life. But you can also be grateful towards your so-called enemies, because they are helping you to progress in your evolution. And you know that they are getting a bad karma because they are so bad to me. But I mean that they are really noble. They are taking upon themselves a bad karma in order to help me to progress in my evolution. They are really noble, that they are taking on themselves such unpleasant consequences just to help me forwards in the evolution. Thank you very much. And there is the highest magic that you can pray for your enemies and you can be grateful to them. And Martinus is talking about this mental sovereignty. Jesus, he really practiced mental sovereignty. When he was crucified and pained, as described in the Passion, even in this situation, he did not lose his balance. He was still very balanced and could pray for the people who were killing him. That is mental sovereignty. And it takes a long time before we can become crucified without getting irritated. We are becoming irritated from smaller things. But each time when we are a little bit irritated, we have the chance to start to practice this mental sovereignty. Because you know, what is coming back is my own thing, and it's only coming back for the best of myself, so I can progress and become a perfect human being. So there are two sides. You can be grateful for your enemies. You can pray for your enemies. But what is also very important, that is, you can be grateful towards life and towards the nature. That means you can also say thank you to God for your lessons. Maybe somebody would think it's an absurd theater to say thank you for the problems. But then maybe you could start to say thank you for the pleasant things. Martinus also stresses that it's really important to be grateful. If, for example, you have been eating a banana, you could say it tastes very good. That's fabulous. Nature has created this beautiful fruit just as a gift, a present for animals and human beings. Thank you very much for this nice present. Or you can see a beautiful sunset. Thank you for this scenery. I'm very happy. And thank you. You could be grateful because you can walk, you can see, you can do a lot. If you really try to examine, thank you because I'm living in a nice country. Thank you. It's not raining in my house. Thank you. I have heating. I have good friends. And it's really good to be conscious about. There's so many things in life where you can be grateful. And if you are grateful, actually, you are on the same wavelength as God. Martinus is sort of saying this is the beginning of cosmic consciousness, because he says you do not get cosmic consciousness or you do not get cosmic glimpses when you are angry. When you are in an aggressive state, you are not having cosmic glimpses. But if you are happy and grateful, in a way, you have the same keynote as the universe, as God. So it's a good thing, just quite neutral, to start to be more conscious, to train and practice, to say thank you to God for all the pleasant things in life. But then you can also train your mental sovereignty when you are trying to say thank you for all the problems and all the unpleasant things, because you know this is love in disguise. It is unpleasant, but the purpose is to transform me into a godlike being. So you have really a logical reason for being very grateful about that. And just in relationship to this theme of journey into microcosmos, then when you are grateful and happy, this is really sunshine for your microcosmos. Then you are really practicing neighbourly love to microcosmos when you are grateful and happy about life, when you really can see that everything is very good. Thank you for today.